A-I-A-I-O, in the travel, here we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips in a snap with a simple chatbot flow. A-I-A-I-O, revolutionizing how we roll. Gonna hop on a plane, feeling so...
Welcome to another episode of the Everything AI in Travel podcast, where we hear from the makers, shapers, and buyers of AI technology in the travel space. Here's your host, Tony Khan.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Everything AI in Travel podcast, and got an absolute cracker for you today. This is one I've been trying to hook up for quite some time now because I love not only one of the companies that this person runs, but two of them. He must be a very busy man. Welcome to the show, Jeremy Jauncey, or JJ. How you going?
Good to have you. Thanks, Tony. Great to see you.
And you, as I said, you're not just a solo founder in one company. You've actually got two amazing businesses, and I'd like to kind of dig in a little bit later on how they're connected. But let's start with the first one, which is Beautiful Destinations. Been around since around 2012. And before that, I noted you were a founder kind of in health tech. So what was it that kind of made you make the leap from health to travel? And give us a bit of a flavor for what the origin story of Beautiful Destinations is.
Yeah, so the truth of the matter is it began just as an Instagram account and a passion project that was sort of leaning into this idea that more and more people wanted to express themselves back then through photo. There was no video on the app. And that Instagram itself as a way of communicating about travel and tourism and life was going to be something big. And we were just very, very early into sort of believing that would be something that consumers would do. And it started as an Instagram account without a business. And the reality is I'd love to say there was a big business plan and there was a grand plan that would lead into kind of where we're at today, but it didn't happen like that. It really began with just building community and connecting with people. And back in those early days of social, it was a really, really great way to connect with people that is maybe a little bit less possible today as the platforms have become more commercialized and have become more sort of business drivers for brands and for DMOs and for others in tourism. But back then it was just a place for creative people to get together, and we saw an opportunity to try and move what had been happening in a more kind of offline space in the traditional publishing and traditional media space into a digital and social world, and connect with people literally across the globe that were making travel content, kind of be the place they could send content and we could be their voice to the industry. And that's how it started. It was probably, I'd say, a year or two in that we started to realize the commercial application of what we could build, as not just more and more people were using the platforms and sending Beautiful Destinations content and engaging with us, but tourism boards and then ultimately hotels and airlines and people in the travel industry started to turn on to this idea that, you know, this could be a distribution channel for your messages, which has now kind of come full circle into ultimately becoming a booking platform and a whole content journey that's happened through that kind of process. So in a nutshell, that's how it came together.
Super incredible, and now named by Fast Company one of the most innovative companies in the world. So from an Instagram account to that stage is, you know, beyond incredible. What was it about travel that you saw or you loved? Were you an avid traveler, or, you know, what was it that made you want to kind of engage in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've traveled for most of my adult life. So I was in my first kind of life when I was at school. I played rugby for Scotland, and actually, what I wanted to do was be a professional athlete. I wanted to be a professional rugby player, and so when I left school, I actually moved to New Zealand playing rugby, and I went via Singapore and got kind of my first exposure to Southeast Asian culture, and then to, you know, Australasian culture, and just absolutely fell in love with New Zealand. It was the best time of my life. Felt that the journey that I went on personally, you know, through that process really opened my eyes to travel. And I guess it was, you know, a good sort of 10, 12 years later that I came around into the travel industry, but not really coming in with an agenda or with an understanding of the industry at all. Like Beautiful Destinations in its kind of infancy didn't really know travel. Like I wasn't from the industry, and the people that first came in to join the company weren't travel people either. But I think as we started to get deeper into it, number one, from a content standpoint, it's just such an inherently beautiful industry to be in. You know, it's not hard to make beautiful travel content. Like, it's really something that is easy to do. It's not like we're selling, you know, financial services, you know, mortgages, or, you know, double glazing or anything like that makes it kind of hard to tell a story about. So I think we just fell into travel and then really just kind of absorbed ourselves in and felt like it was a great place to be that's only kind of continued to grow since we began.
It's a super interesting story, and I actually work with another company here in Australia that has a very similar story called Best in Travel. And likewise, the founder there, Tom Bayford, picked up the Best in Travel at Best in Travel handle around 2010 or 2011, and then actually did nothing with it for about 9 years. But it actually, he posts the odd beautiful photo of, what he thought was the best in travel, and it blew up. And he's actually decided to move away from his old industry, which was fitness, into travel, and build something on top of it. So there are some other examples out there of this pathway, which I think is quite incredible and shows the importance of getting in early, I think, on things. Now, beautiful destinations today, it's a much more sophisticated business. And one of the things I really love, and why I wanted to get you on the pod, was the reports that you guys put out. And you put out a couple of really great ones recently. Tell us about what they are, what the purpose of those are, and why people should be reading them.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I appreciate you bringing those up, because we felt for the longest time that this particular segment of content creators and the wider notion of social commerce was somewhat underrepresented in the reporting about the travel industry. And we felt like there was a huge opportunity to come in, and given we've been in the space for so long, given our whole business is built on the idea that content drives the travel industry, and that creators and social commerce is really kind of where the puck is going, that we could come out with reports and insights that would be a blend of what we see through our unique perspective, speaking to clients, working with content creators, and being a content creator ourselves, bringing that perspective, and then looking at new ways to distribute and market travel. Now, we've got 50 million people that follow our social channels now, and so there's a massive amount of data that comes off the interactions that they have with us, whether it's through direct messages, whether it's through the content they're engaging in, whether it's through the other creators that we work with, how they communicate with them. And so we just felt like we'd focus first off, which was the kind of inaugural report, which was the state of social in travel today in 2025. Like, what does it mean? How do marketers use it? How does the best in class think about it? How can you really leverage content, and how can that play into a strategy that's not just for sort of top of the funnel awareness metrics, that really understands that now today's traveler is seeing content in feed, going into their DMs, starting conversations in DMs and other integrated tools within social platforms, where they're moving down the funnel. They're doing research, they're doing planning. Like, you and I could be DMing each other on Instagram with videos of places that we want to go, having a discussion that traditionally marketers would have thought would happen off social, would have happened in other places, but actually getting really into the research and planning phase, even to the extent that we're seeing within places like the Meta family of apps. People are starting an Instagram, they're DMing that content to each other, they're setting up WhatsApp groups. Then in those WhatsApp groups, they're really actively planning out their trip, and then ultimately booking it through an integration on Facebook or some other kind of platform that is from social. And it's a very, very different behavior. And I know you and many others who are kind of at the forefront of the industry are really championing some of the data that's coming out around how much travel begins in social, how social is being so influential in that kind of booking journey, that we felt like our reporters could come out and talk to that. So that was the first one. And that was really focused on like a general macro perspective of what's happening in the industry. But it's actually just today we launched a report that's very much focused on hotels and the hospitality industry, and leans into how the more progressive OTAs and sellers of travel are now also leaning into how they can leverage social, and particularly how they can use video in their booking journeys. So I think we'd like to think of ourselves as kind of early and trying to educate people on what's happening. And so, having a chance to come and chat to you about it is great for me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share it.
Too easy. And obviously you're preaching to the converted with me, building Viderio, the travel's first video first OTA. I'm on board, but what I guess I've found through our research is that the travel industry, we're behind. We're behind what other verticals have done, particularly fashion. I think have pioneered this very well. We've modeled Viderio on a business called LTK in fashion, which has been going for a long time, but a brilliant innovation of using technology to match video to products and pull that customer down the funnel. And that one, we're all on board with that. But it just seems like the travel industry's behind. Is that your feeling as well? And I guess second part of that question is, there are some big players that are starting to move into this arena, and one of those is Expedia, who I know is one of your clients and you've just done some amazing work with, and maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well, listen, credit to you for seeing the opportunity, and what you're building with Videro is certainly ahead of where we see most of the industry. I think you're absolutely right that we as an industry have been slow. And I look back, I mean, it's almost 10 years, it's 9 years ago now, I spoke at the Skift Global Forum, and the guys there were very, very kind to give me an opportunity to come up and talk about social and creators and influence on online. And back then I was saying, look, the travel industry is really slow to adopt social media and content. And I think it's still true. It's still true today. So yes, we're very, very early. Yes, you building your business and your vision around what LTK are doing is absolutely brilliant, because the fashion industry, the beauty industry, some of the shorter consideration, shorter sales cycle, product-based businesses have absolutely embraced social commerce, and they're off to the races in that, and they're building really, really meaningful businesses off the back of that. I think LTK, I think they got a couple of $100 million from SoftBank and had really scaled out off the back of the success that they've had just in fashion alone. So the market is there, the opportunity is there. I think a lot of the debate that we've had over the years up until this point has been people saying, a consumer won't buy travel on social because there's too many data points they need to get from lots of different sites. We know that's not the case anymore, because that data can be represented through rich video. We also know that people are spending so much more time in social looking at video content when they do their planning, that much of the stuff that you need, other than maybe that final leg around flights, is covered. So I personally would be much, much happier seeing video itinerary tours of destinations and hotels to get a sense of what would really happen if I went to that location, rather than reading, a written paragraph on TripAdvisor or on a booking engine. So I do think we're moving in that direction. Mentioning Expedia, they, credit to them, they're also kind of looking into what the future will hold, and they've started looking at ways to integrate creators and video content into their flow. So Travel Shops is the first product that they've launched, of which I believe there will be many more opportunities for them to lean into that space. And certainly we get pretty excited when companies like what you're doing and guys like them are really seeing the power of video, because our perspective is that video should be everywhere across the funnel. It is what consumers want to see, and so being able to build that, into your customer journey, I think is super important.
For sure. And actually, from the Viderio journey, we actually started with the offer of helping companies bring video into their own platforms, so into their own websites, etc., because that's still a difficult thing to do, which is kind of crazy to say in 2025 that the best in practice is still dropping in a YouTube embed where, it looks ugly, the UI is terrible, and the customer can leak off to YouTube and never come back. For that to still be best in class, to me, is crazy. But we didn't actually get traction in that. We couldn't find the brands that were interested enough in that for us to continue to pursue it. And then we found a much better fit doing it another way. So I think that's kind of interesting. Why wouldn't brands want to have video as part of their product pages if they could have it in a really simple and easy way, have the authenticity of creators telling their stories for them? But that's kind of where we've landed, and I think we'll probably end up going back to that later in the process when it's kind of more proven out and becomes more standard. I'd love to get your thoughts on AI videos as the technology is evolving and becoming much better. But in travel, does AI have a place in video creation?
100%. And I can tell you how we see it and how we think it represents an enormous opportunity, where I think when we first started building our business, and even relatively recently, the pitch that we've been making to potential clients is, under the traditional infrastructure that you've been using to make content, you might do that one campaign a year, one campaign a season, where you think of that kind of Super Bowl moment, that one piece of big content that you spend a ton of money on, which you then cut up and put onto social. Like, our pitch has always been, you need to have content every single day. You need to have content that's unique for each platform. You need to really be thinking about a way to have an always-on content strategy. And certainly the clients that are progressive have understood that and have moved towards that model. But what AI enables us to do is just scale the quality and the consistency of edits of our content. So we will always use creators to begin our content process, to go out to make content, to show real, authentic, genuine content of places. AI enables us to make many, many different edits of that content in a much more fast and efficient time. In the post-production for us, it's been a game changer because we had in the past, huge edit teams and finding ways to manually change the things we needed for clients that AI now does in a split second. So we can give a much better service to clients from the content delivery standpoint. And also if we need to do quick edits to pieces of content for the own content we want to put on BD, it's enabled us to do that. So in a content creation standpoint, in the post-production, it's been massive. It's also been super helpful in the pre-production when we think about ideation or creative ideas or even strategy for our clients, where having a conversation with a large language model around creative ideas now is this unbelievable thought partner to our creative process. And that enables us to be better understanding the business challenges of our clients and then actually empowering the creators that we work with without necessarily burdening them with making detailed storyboards, doing loads and loads of desk-based research before they go to the location they're going to shoot, and kind of giving them those tools in a much faster and more efficient way. So I'm a massive believer of AI in content creation. And as I said, making that differentiation between improving workflows and increasing the output of content that you can give to partners, that's how we're leaning into it versus creating new AI generated world. You probably even saw today the announcement from ChatGPT with their image generator. Like that kind of stuff is just so incredibly powerful when you think as a marketer what you're able to do with those tools in your hands. So we're a massive proponent of AI, and I just think it's so important for marketers to use it in their in their workflows today.
I love the way that you've positioned that. Pre-production, post-production, AI is the absolute master. And small anecdote, the very first time I did a podcast, I tried to edit it myself in some type of software that I had no experience with, whatever. I think it took me 3.5 hours to edit a 30-minute podcast. I didn't do a very good job of it. And actually, I thought I'm never doing another podcast because the time taken to versus the reward that you get out of it is just the value's not there. And then next week I found Descript, which is an AI tool, and now you and I are having this conversation. At the end, it's going to download. I'm going to put it into Script, and literally I'm going to listen through once, so another 30 minutes, and every edit will be done. All the ums and ahs that you, the listener, don't get to hear, but trust me, there's plenty of them. I think it's usually around 270 just from me in every episode. One click and they're all gone. And so in post-production, and if you think of how traditional marketing departments have worked in travel companies, they've always been making the sky a little bit more blue, or taking out the random lurker in the background of a photo that's otherwise the perfect photo except for that person. So these things have always been happening, but now it's just do it in a snap and it's gone. I'd love to move the conversation now to your other business, which is Layla, or Ask Layla. Tell us a little bit about that. And that is a very AI first business, and you actually made one of the very first acquisitions in travel and AI by acquiring Roam Around. Shai was the very second guest, the very first AI edited guest I had on this podcast. So run us a little bit through Layla and how it's going and what's happening there.
Yeah, of course. Well, I feel very fortunate with that business in that I was introduced to a guy called Saad Saeed a good few years ago now by the leadership team at Skift. And the long story short with Saad is very, very accomplished entrepreneur, engineer by background. He had been one of the co-founders of Germany's fastest unicorn, a company called Flink. What they did was that last mile delivery, like DoorDash in the US, but for Germany and then across Europe. And during his entrepreneurial journey, he had seen massive success with that team, scaling, raising huge rounds, getting massive investment, and he had decided to leave the business and explore sort of new opportunities. So I was introduced to him in that kind of exploration phase, and we both found kind of a shared passion for what AI could do in travel. He wanted to get into the travel industry, and so we had a bunch of conversations about what could be done, what wasn't being done, how AI could enable a better experience for consumers. And really in the very, very early stages of AI, we were thinking about how to build a business. And with him and his pedigree and with my time in travel and the relationships that I had, we're able to go and raise an investment round from really some just unbelievable investors. We're so grateful to have the guys on board that we have. Brent Hoberman, founder of lastminute.com, and Barry Smith, the founder of Skyscanner, Andy Phillips, founder of Active Hotels, which became booking.com. and Paris Hilton. They all backed us in the very, very early stages. And Sada's run the business as the CEO. He oversees engineering. He oversees everything. He's an amazing guy. And actually, Shai, who you mentioned, also very, very fortunate to have him as a part of the business, because when we saw what he was building, we were in a position, we were just a little bit further ahead in terms of our monetization journey and our scaling journey from a fundraising standpoint. We felt like someone of his caliber we wanted to have in the business, and the roam around product that he built was a very natural complement to what we had built with Layla. But the fundamental insight really with Layla and how it works is technology, AI enabled itineraries essentially take away all the challenges that you face when you ask yourself the question of where do I go to and what do I do, which is still what most people do today. Most of the times when people think about travel, the thought of the research and the planning that you need to do is relatively daunting. 38 different websites, I think, is the stat that people go through, and you all know how painful that process is. The goal of Layla is to optimize all of that for you, so that all you need to do is enter in a few kind of very simple chats to prompt Layla to give you insights into where to go and what to do. And she comes back with very detailed itineraries. We take you all the way through the journey from discovery and inspiration and learning about a destination or a hotel or an experience that you can do, all the way through to actually seeing through rich video what it would look like, and then integrating all the different points of interest to create an itinerary so that you can ultimately plan your trip and then book that trip. And we feel that we were maybe one of the first in this space to kind of jump in and do this. And we've learned so much over these last couple of years that we're continually pivoting and continually changing the way the business is going. But most, to be honest, that started out in this field have either been acquired or maybe have kind of run out of steam. And thankfully Layla's in a great place, starting to find product market fit around its subscription-based offering. That's what we're seeing the most traction with consumers, and getting ready for its next round of probably funding and scaling.
Interesting. So your points of differentiation, if I'm not incorrect, I believe it's in the app ecosystem. So it's something that people download and have on their phone. It may also work in web. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah. I actually wasn't aware of the subscription type service. Like, is that kind of a monthly, or you can do it per trip, or how's that working?
Yeah, it's a mixture. So I'll tell you where it came from. What we were finding was that we made the very deliberate decision when we were building Layla to give her a personality and to invest a lot of time and resource and energy into creating an experience for the user that didn't feel like a mechanical chatbot. We felt as though, and even still to this day, most of the AI-driven products in the market are somewhat removed from the consumer, in that you feel as though you're chatting to an AI. You feel like you're chatting to a piece of technology. And so for us, what we wanted to do was create a much more engaging environment for the consumer, so that they could have a natural language conversation like they would with a trusted friend who knew you very, very well. And so we invested a ton of time in personality, in tone, in the way that Layla communicates. And we found that what that enabled consumers to do is get really comfortable in their interaction with her, and then ultimately open up in much, much more detail around what kind of trip they wanted to do. And so we were finding this really exciting comparison between what an OTA or a traditional booking experience is versus what a Layla experience is. And so let's say you and I go onto any OTA, we will follow pretty much exactly the same user journey, whatever kind of trip we're going for. We'll select our dates in the same way. We will select the number of nights we want to book for. We'll select the room categories. It's very, very templatized. And actually what we find with Layla is, because you are engaging in natural chat, and because you're not going through that checkbox kind of linear process, people really open up with a level of detail that they're looking for in their trip. And so with that much more detail, we can create an infinitely more personalized booking experience for them. And so we were finding in the early days that people were going on and spending 15 to 20 minutes talking with Layla, giving us so much information about this trip that they were planning, that ultimately we got to a place where we'd given so much value to the user. We really felt like we had kind of earned our stripes with them, that they felt comfortable actually paying for that information. And so we tested a number of different business models. And today what's been working is the idea that you can engage with Layla for free. Of course, you can start, if you're starting to see value and you want to go deeper, then you can upgrade and you can pay to get the really rich experience. And we like to think of it akin to maybe a more traditional travel advisor or travel agent who has that sector knowledge. Layla has all the knowledge in the world, in every language that you need, in real time, constantly updated. underpinned and powered by, in this case, it's Booking.com. So the millions and millions of data points that come from a leading OTA like that. So with that combination, the user feels comfortable in actually investing some money to pay for the itinerary for that trip or for a longer basis.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth when you made the travel advisor comparison there, because that's the way that industry has moved. I guess back in the old days, you could sit in front of an advisor and chat for 45 minutes, an hour or whatever, and it never cost you anything to get that information. But I think that's kind of dying out by and large now, and there is value on that time. And so people that can see that value and are willing to now understand that that's something that you need to pay for up front. And for you to be able to work that in from a technological point of view, I think is very smart. So Layla is completely B2C, or is there a B2B play in there?
We're focusing on B2C. We've had a bunch of interest and a bunch of requests around B2B, and there are certain players in the market, kind of credit to them, have focused on B2B. But really for us, the vision of Layla is so large. We really believe that there's an enormous opportunity to be changing the way that people book, like just fundamentally changing the way that people do their travel planning and their travel booking. That we want to focus on B2C. We want to be, I guess, not sidetracked by B2B, but I think trying to do both. It's very, very different audiences. And with the Beautiful Destinations business, we are a B2B business. We are set up to service clients and manage clients and listen to their needs and deliver against those needs. And it is very, very different to what an individual traveler will be looking for when they're planning their trip. So we are tripling down on B2C, and that's where we think there is an enormous opportunity. And you see countless examples in the travel trade press at the moment around other big players in the space that are B2C OTAs or sellers of travel that are doing their own B2C AI enabled partners like Layla. And I think at this stage there isn't a clear winner. It's still up for grabs, and that for me as an entrepreneur is incredibly exciting, because we can find ourselves, competing with the multi-billion-dollar travel industry players that aren't clear leaders yet, and that for me is exciting. Let's go and give it a shot. That's where we want to focus.
For sure. It is absolutely exciting and really great to hear that from you. Now, we're running out of time here, but I would love to get kind of a forward-looking view from you, from all your perspectives, from the B2B side of Beautiful Destinations and potentially what's happening with Layla. What do you see unfolding over 25, 26? What are you excited about? What's coming down the pipeline for you guys, and what's next, do you think?
Yeah, so I'd say content is probably the most exciting it's ever been from an understanding standpoint in the industry. Certainly the first 5-6 years of building BD, I was trying to educate customers on why they even needed content, why they needed it at the frequency and the scale that we believe that you do need content. Now I feel like the industry, to an extent, is understanding and embracing that, and we're seeing more and more people actually shifting their marketing mix from that kind of traditional 80% on media, 20% on content, changing those mixes. And we're certainly advocates of being much closer to sort of 50-50 and maybe even shifting even further than that, because these content assets are so important and you need them for so many different platforms. So I do think 25 and into 26 and beyond, we're going to see more and more meaningful investment from travel players and making their own content, which is fantastic. Now, within content, I'm very specifically talking about video and short form video. I think we are moving away from a world where video was seen as traditional branded content, and you had the big sort of traditional publishers, whose legacy media has been in the space for so long, really selling long narrative storytelling driven content, where actually what consumers want is they want short, sharp, educational, beautiful content. The top 10 things to do here, the top 5 things to do when I travel with my wife, and so on. And that's really our sweet spot. That's what we do really, really well. So I'm seeing a lot more of that, which is really encouraging for the core business of BD. I think on the AI side, I'd love to suggest that maybe as an industry, we did AI a bit of a disservice because we got ahead of our skis right from day one. And I remember when people first started talking about AI and travel, when ChatGPT first came out, we had thought leaders in the space saying, oh, AI is going to book your trip, when you miss your flight, it's going to automatically plan it for you. And then it's going to adjust your points credit statement from your hotel provider and all that stuff. And it's all going to be automated for you with a click. And we just set such an extremely high bar that the reality was we were never going to get there. So with that as the expectation, AI has maybe kind of underwhelmed up until this point. And certainly, again, if you read the mainstream travel media, what you'll see is a continued underwhelming narrative about AI. And I think that framing will change. I think that framing needs to change because there is so much amazing capability if you understand how to use AI. And I think that's going to come kind of more and more when it focuses on how you deliver value to the user, which is really kind of our mantra and our focus on Layla. So I think you will probably see more content creation coming from AI, and I think there will be good things and there'll be bad things that come from that. I think you'll see a lot more commentary. The industry loves to, get together and opine on the good and the bad of social and content and creators and all that stuff. So we'll see lots more people, throwing their hat in the ring with good and bad takes as they have for the last decade. So I anticipate a lot more of that. But I think the companies that get ahead of it, embrace content, embrace social, and then embrace AI will be the leaders of the future. And certainly our push in anything that we do, whether it's the investments that we make or the businesses that we build, is just to skate to where the puck is going and to look at what are the future decades of travel growth going to look like, how are consumers going to behave, and I very passionately believe that they're going to be behaving differently to the way they are today, and we kind of want to be at the forefront of that.
Here to that, and I've ridden that hype curve of AI, obviously naming this media, the newsletter and the podcast, everything AI and travel. I think there was a time maybe about 4 or 5 months ago I thought, well, this is about to flame out because, either AI will just get absorbed into everything, become like electricity and just not get talked about, or the underwhelmingness of the results will make it kind of go away. But, I can now feel it kind of back on the upswing again as people understand it better, start to iterate better with it and create better things for it. Thank you so much for your time today and your thoughts. It's been incredibly illuminating. If people have liked what they have heard today, if they want to get their hands on those reports you mentioned, or they want to get in touch with you about potentially doing some business with BD or finding out more about Layla, what's the best way to get in contact?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. So for the reports, just go to beautifuldestinations.com. Really simple. It's on the homepage. You can see them there. Connecting with me, LinkedIn, definitely the best. I'm very active on LinkedIn, very grateful that so many people do reach out. I get loads of inbounds from LinkedIn. So please keep kind of reaching out there, and I can get you connected to anyone in our businesses that would be helpful. But LinkedIn and beautifuldestinations.com, those are the best ways.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. I didn't mention it, but you are a little bit jet lagged because you've been hopping all over the world. So I really appreciate you making the time and the effort to come and educate everyone in the industry about what it is that you're doing and why it's so important. Thanks for your time today.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Tony.
Beautiful. Thanks, JJ. That's it for another one.
Thanks,
people.
Mate.
We'll look forward to seeing and having you listen along to the very next one as it comes down the pipe. That's it for today. Thanks. Bye.
AI, in the travel, then we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips